1 million of our mill rate would be a 2% tax increase.
So what portion is 65,000 of 1 mil?
It would be, we're working out to be.
Peanuts, right? Okay. We're getting letters from poor people saying most of these condos.
Councilor, no, we're not debating the motion at this time.
Well, I just want to clarify.
No, I want,
yeah,
I have a question on what's been presented.
I do have a question.
Directly.
Okay. A lot of the condos are owned by Cornwall Housing and provincial housing, and seniors have many condos. Now, they feel that with the tax increase, it has gone up and up. Yet, it's like giving candy to a baby. You offer them.
Councilor, you're out of order. We haven't covered that matter yet, so please take your seat. Councilor Rivette has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
When we get to the motion, you can make your speech then, not now.
I'm making a speech.
You are. There was no question.
You didn't give me a chance.
You're out of order. Councilor Rivette.
When we talk about the dollars to pick up the street, it's $56.45 it costs us to have it picked up. The hauler's credit is $30 and some cents. Is that what's the credit in the hauler?
The hauler's credit is based on the tons, the unit. So there's an average of 1.9 persons per unit.
Which in dollars? I heard $30 and something. Where does that come from?
Per unit.
Per unit.
That's part of that. That's part of the calculation. It's also based on the average tonnage of waste per household.
Okay.
It's $64 a ton that we're charging on our tipping fee. So the calculation is based on that tipping fee calculation.
Okay. Looking at the landfill site, and I know there's concern that they're not hauling it to our site. I look at that as a savings both ways to the city. One, we get a longer life landfill site. We can reduce the cost of closing cells. And again, I have to say like Morris did, I think there's a process there of balance of checks that's got to be looked into. I think that, you know, accountants, we have spot checks, we have this, you know, there's nothing says we can't, you tell them, you want that credit, you have to, there's rules and regulations. So we can walk in and spot check and say, you go by the landfill site and weigh that garbage that you stick out of these places. You know, to make sure that we're paying for what we're supposed to be paying for. If they're taking it out somewhere else, it's a different story. I understand that. But I think that, you know, we have our strategic plan basically says that strengthen the property standards. Well, I'll tell you, if you turn this the other way, I wouldn't want to be in the property standard committee because you're going to have a hell of a mess. I think it was great. When this thing was put forward, I was very hesitant because I dealt with it in the park system where people used to dump garbage somewhere else instead of, you know, in the landfill site or. Anyway,
we're going to get to the motions shortly.
Okay. Well, just to say that these things that are putting forward, I don't see it as a negative. I see it as a positive because we're extending our landfill site. I don't care where the guys run the garbage, as long as it's not in front of the buildings.
Councilor Tebow?
Just once we have a motion.
We'll get to the motion. Councilor Graham, if there's a question, I'll entertain credit. Otherwise, I'd like to get to the motion. Please. Councilor Graham.
Speak.
Thank you.
Just for my understanding, if this is passed, then the residents are taking the garbage to the road. Is there a cost for them? Or there's no cost for them to put it at the road. So what would they be losing by taking that process? The tax credit, which we don't know they're getting anyway, but they would be losing that tax credit of $30, right?
Yes.
So this comes down to $30 difference per unit. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if I live in a unit, I bring my garbage there, I don't get a tax credit, but there's
No cost.
no cost.
Right.
So it makes no difference.
Yeah, question through the chair. When you talk about a site plan agreement, was that site plan agreement something that was in place as the units were being built?
Mr. Alexander?
Site plan approvals came into effect about 1984 or somewhere thereabouts, and steadily dealt with a larger number of developments up until today. Typically, it applies to buildings of 6 and 8 units or more, typically 8 units or more that are in apartments, not townhouses. So the point is that the site plan approvals apply to a limited scope of developments, typically larger residential developments.
This would have been during construction.
Yeah, that's correct.
So-
So it would have been something they would have signed prior to the development of the
Okay,
unit.
so we wouldn't have knowledge of whether the tenant has notice of that site plan agreement.
The site plan agreement is registered on the title of that property, but it's not likely a tenant will go looking for it.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so any further, Councilor Clement, question?
Okay, so there may be something I'm not getting. Originally, the waste credit was designed to compensate for the fact that haulers had mixed residential and commercial, right? So you couldn't tell, we didn't want to give them, we didn't want to penalize them for taking in residential waste. So then, how is eliminating the credit, so how is this credit a disincentive to recycling? Like, walk me through how that works. From a condo owner or a tenant walking down the hall and putting it down a chute to walking into the curbside. What is the difference exactly in the disincentive around recycling?
Well, so the fundamental thinking is that if you're not paying tipping fees, there's no incentive to not just throw it on the waste side.
So the tenant or condo owner is just putting everything in one bag?
Because these tipping fees are, it's not any tipping fees. So there's really nothing, there's no, let's say, financial incentive to go to this box or this box.
But all the tenants or condo owners have a box though? Was that part of the grant program that was done last year?
Not the individual units, but the buildings
Have the big blue boxes? And was there a program to educate tenants and condo owners about somehow separating the trash at that point, or?
It was quite extensive. There was a manual prepared that we met with the older owners, and we looked at the program. They were delivered carts then based on one cart for 7 units, free of charge. So it was an extensive program to get them on board with recycling.
So could they not do that, and then you have, so the hauler is picking up 2 separate things? So the tenants and condo owners do the sorting out, and then the hauler then takes only the real waste and not the recycling waste? I'm trying to...
Well, we pick up recycling, or we can have a contractor pick up recycling. So.
Couldn't we get at encouraging recycling without eliminating the credit? And couldn't we in some way improve the way that we ask haulers to invoice? I mean, wouldn't they have to prove, couldn't we ask them to prove where they brought the waste, or whether they went to an accredited landfill or not? I mean, are there other ways around this to get at recycling and educate people on recycling, but not necessarily eliminate the credit?
I honestly don't know how we would be able to find us where all ever seen it. It's just on a truck.
So we just...
You know, to be in the worst with this. And I think there's an issue with that.
We're not able to verify when the material is coming to the landfill site. We're not able to verify its origin either. Right, so we're paying this credit based on and this is why I think credit calculation was established the way it is. It's based on average household waste. It's based on average occupancy per unit, regardless of how many individuals are in those units. It's based on all of these numbers from census data to offset the cost, but it's not really based on anything that is really actual to our actual collection.
And there's no way, or we haven't thought of a way to be able to somehow follow that or track that process or track where they're going or having them show some evidence of having done one thing or another.
Like what's happening here, the credit is based on average occupancy of 1.1. Is that the right number? No, let's put solar at 1, and other places have more than 1.9. A lot of units of one person. So more.
There are buildings with vacancies, you know, so we have new developments in our community. One in the west end of the city that has a fairly substantial vacancy rate. So we have to go and verify that, because the credit might be for, or the request for the credit might be for something that's in excess of what actual occupancy is.
So making the hauler more accountable for the credit is too complicated, or we don't have the...
I don't think that it's too complicated. We can't verify the information. So we're paying the hauler. I don't think that we should be paying the hauler, right? But we're not privy to those contracts. If you want us to go back and reconsider how we institute that credit, you know, we can take a look at that. But from through this process, we're not able to verify very much of the information. So it's a matter of deciding whether or not you just want to issue a credit for $30.40 for these types of units where they're using a private hauler.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
Thank you very much, Worship. And along the lines of Councilor Fallon's questions as well, we have data on all of our taxpayers. Putting the burden, or the onus of the burden, on the hauler to keep us informed, and then there's got to be a mechanism by which we can audit them. Are you saying just because it might be difficult, we're not going to do it? I'm not following that. Is it easier to just eliminate it than try and get an audit in place? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think it's not that it's difficult for us. It's that we're not privy to, like, when it comes to apartment buildings. So if you're talking about condos, we might have a better indication of who owns the condo and how many people are residing in the condo. It's likely single, couple demographics. But when you get into apartment buildings throughout our community, well, we don't have the ability to verify necessarily how many people are living in those buildings. So again, it's based on this 1.9 average people per unit. It's based on that calculation.
Okay, and I just wanted to question Morris, or Mr. McCormick, on the no additional resources would be required. Would by us doing this, would that not be some form of breach to their current situation where they don't currently pay to have this service? Other than through their condo fees or whatever, what happened?
No, when I'm saying no additional resources are required, that's, we hire a contractor to pick it up and pay them at the ton. So there's no, for them to pick up the additional material at the curbside has no effect on city resources.
Yeah, because the trickle effect with that, it would likely be more people out there, more time from the contractor than the contractor's invoice to us would be. I would think.
But it's on a per ton basis.
Yeah, but
The cost is less for us to use our contractor than it is to issue the credit if we were to pick it up curbside.
currently with the contractor is what I'm saying. And I know they charge, but they would tweak, because if they have more of a payroll to cover, because it takes more time, because it would take more time to go, then they would likely pass along, they wouldn't absorb those.
We pay per ton.
We pay per ton. That's it.
I think it's a 5-year contract. 5-year contract is part of the time.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm okay with that. And the other thing was, this system's 24 years old. It's so flawed, why are we only looking at it now? If this was not a good thing to do, why do we implement it? Why do we take 2.5 decades to figure out that, oops, we goofed?
We've known for about 30 years.
I know it's part of the 2009 and then the 2011 strategy that we talked about, but this wouldn't have been identified before this.
I think it's 3 minutes to hear from me. It's always been a problem for those 24 years or that time. It's really just never really hit the top of the agenda, if you will. So and it really came about through this implementation plan that we created a number of years ago. So it basically just made it to the top now. Ultimately, though, from the very, well, I don't know about the very beginning, but I know from at least the 1990s and on, we had problems with this. This has always been a concern of ours. And I think it's really when we got right into the study itself where we recognize that it's not part of the best practices. Part of the study that we undertook by Stantec, which created this 5-year plan, was to really investigate best practices. What do other communities do? How do they deal with these issues? And no one did it then, and no one effectively does it now, or very few. And we're trying to implement the best practice. So it's just the timing is
All right. Okay. I don't know if I could let, is there a question, Councilor?
No, I was going to make a motion.
Well, I just want to make sure that the presentation is complete. Is there anything else to add, Maureen, Nicole, or
No,
Morris?
we just wanted to, on our recommendation is to proceed to eliminate the credit system and to provide support for multi-residential recycling programs and other diversion initiatives.
Okay, will someone move the recommendation? Councilor Tebow, seconded by Councilor Gardner. Debate. Councilor
I
Tebow.
wanted to make a motion, but I wasn't moving that motion.
Right now we have a recommendation. Okay, that's fine, that's what I understand. Just seeking if someone wishes to move the recommendation. Councilor Grant, seconded by Councilor McDonald. Okay, debate. Councilor Tebow, Councilor Rivette.
Thank you, Your Worship. My motion would have been to not accept the recommendation made by administration and to keep the credit as is for the foreseeable future. When Stantec made this recommendation last year or 2 years ago, I was against it. I brought up the issue at that particular time and had a long discussion. Obviously, I didn't get much traction because it was a 5-year plan and there was a lot of stuff in it, and I still don't buy into the fact that this needs to be put in the place that we need to eliminate it. And I have some questions, and I guess my first question is that the formula that we're using presently is Stats Canada. Why is it not a made in Cornwall formula, since we have the scales, we know the stuff that goes to our dump, and that we could develop our own formula instead of a formula that is Stats Canada based, which is national, which potentially looks at the larger cities, and probably most of it would be based on GTA and some of the larger communities. And I guess, is there a reason why we don't have our own formula? We don't have the equipment to do it together.
We can't, if I could speak to that, we can't verify the actual occupancy per unit in the city. So there's buildings throughout the community. We can't verify how many people actually reside in each unit. We also can't, like when the hauler picks up waste from our site, it's reasonable that they might go to multiple locations and complete their run when the stuff is brought to the landfill site. We have no way of verifying when waste is picked up, whether or not it came from a specific location. We can't verify that. We can verify the weight when it arrives at the landfill site, but we can't verify its origin and where it came from.
So having a deal with the haulers, that there is a contract with them, that the state stipulate in the agreement that they will only haul the waste from the buildings where they should be hauling from, and so on. And I guess I understand what you're saying, but is garbage pickup not included in the taxes for the apartments and condo owners?
Yes, it is.
Right. So if it is, why are we looking at having them pay for the removal of their garbage a second time through a hauler at their own cost? Or would we rather have all those buildings put all of their bags out in front of the building? Because that's the only option that you're offering, two options. One is continue with the hauler and pay for your own haulers. Or take your bags and put them out in front of the building. And if you're looking at a building that has, I don't know how many bags goes in front of your building, your worship, but we have a lot of buildings in this community. And I looked, for instance, we had major issues on Brookdale with the two buildings in that particular area. And it took a long time to get that fixed. We seem to have a system in place right now that is working, but we're looking to change that, and that worries me. My next question is, has the credit not been reduced over the last couple of years? I understand it was reduced by about 35% a year or two ago.
It was just reduced last year.
Last year?
We did, with the 2011 census data, I was able to even pinpoint even more that it was the apartment buildings. Prior to last year, we were using number of people per dwelling unit overall, so that included single-family households. So last year, when looking through the data, I was able to pinpoint to apartment buildings with 7 or plus units. So that's reduced the number a little bit. And prior to 2011, the stat for the waste didn't really incorporate recycling. In 2011, we incorporated recycling, so that again reduced the waste average over a year per person.
I have an email from one of the haulers that is offering the opportunity to sign a contract to put a stamp on any piece of paper you want with a signature to the effect that they'll live through whatever the city wants in order to verify whatever garbage, where the garbage is coming from. And I guess my only other point on the presentation, maybe you have an answer for me. And it was a point I think addressed by Councilor Rivette. Any garbage that is not hauled to our own site adds to the life of our particular site, I think. And I guess, is that a yes or a no? Yeah. Yes?
That is correct.
Okay. So I'm going to vote against the motion, because I was going to make a motion not to accept your recommendation. And your worship, I would ask for a recorded vote.
Councilor Rivette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I want to make it clear here this evening that administration has a job to do. They bring it to us, and it's respectfully what I have to say here this evening. We have had no costing of what it's going to cost the taxpayer of Cornwall for all the coronary units, the coronary housing units, to put their garbage in front, because we won't have the haulers to do that. That means